There's nothing with one line, so I don't know why.
All right, we're gonna get started here in a second, everybody. Sorry for the delay. I had a misunderstanding with somebody from the city of Lone Tree that I had to meet here at 6. She's been waiting for me upstairs and I've been waiting for her down here. And when she just came in, I made to deal with it anyway. Yeah. Let's get started. Not with you. No, you're not sharing it, Fred, but let's get
So I
started.
need to figure out where share is.
Oh, yeah, you should be at the bottom of the screen. I was told we might have a couple guests on Zoom. I don't see anybody. Is anybody out there in Zoom a guest and I'm just not recognizing that I don't know you? I'll take that as a no. You guys can all hear me, yeah? Jim's nodding.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so welcome to the first competition of 2026. It's an open competition, as you guys all know. A couple quick announcements. We have two photo walks that I've scheduled. The one that's happening first is on February 8th at the Denver Art Museum. We're going to meet at I'm reading Carl's notes that he sent me, 1:30, but I think Jim, didn't we schedule it for 12:30?
12:30.
Yeah, he's on Central Time. Yeah, so 12:30 Mountain Time is at the Denver Art Museum. It's on our Facebook page, so check that out. And that'll give you plenty of time to do a photo walk with us and then watch the Super Bowl if you're into that sort of thing. The next one after that we have scheduled is the St. Patrick's Day Parade on March 14th. We're meeting at 8 a.m. at Denver Central Market in Rhino, and that is where we met. For those of you that were on the Rhino photo walk that we did at the end of July, we met at Denver Central Market for that. So the St. Patrick's Day Parade is a lot of fun and you get some really cool pictures. And just a quick note, the light, at least last year anyway, the light from the sun coming into the Denver Central Market at sunrise at about 8 o'clock was incredible. Like I'm already like looking forward to shooting that day just for the sun. So that's March 14th. Don't forget everybody that dues are due by the next meeting, which is February 11th. Please pay your dues if you haven't already. I was looking at the roster earlier today at about 3:45 and we had about, assuming everybody that ended the year as a member is going to rejoin, and I know there's at least one who's not, somebody who moved out of state, but generally speaking, if everybody's who was a member at the end of the year is going to be new, we're still about 35 or so people that we need to get dues from. So please take care of that by February 11th, or I'll have to send my henchmen out to you. I don't have henchmen, so don't worry about that. Okay. I don't think I have any other announcements. So today's subject is open. The open category allows photographers to submit images of any subject matter. Members are, however, encouraged to explore photographic techniques and subjects outside their usual style. But you'll be happy to know that I didn't submit any street photographs. Our judge tonight is Cheryl Opperman. I'm going to read a quick bio about her and then give you guys a few quick reminders and then hand it over to Fred to share his screen to get the slideshow going, because we do have 58 images tonight. So that's not a record, but it's a good amount. Cheryl Opperman is a nationally acclaimed nature photographer who has traveled to every continent in the world, capturing spectacular images of nature, wildlife, and indigenous cultures. Widely published, her photographs have appeared in print, on the web, on television, and in solo and group exhibits, resulting in a list of clients or credits which include the American Humane Association, Overseas Adventure Travel, the Denver Post, the National Geographic Society, and the Smithsonian National Museum of Natural History. Cheryl's aesthetic compositions, artistic use of light, and exquisite detail have been honored with several prestigious awards from organizations including the Earth Day Network, Nature's Best Photography, the International Photography Awards, and the National Wildlife Federation. She was also featured as a leading female nature photographer by Outdoor Photographer magazine, and has appeared in on-camera interviews by 9 News Denver, the Luminous Landscape, and Smithsonian Earth. Using the power of photography to inspire interest in the environment and other cultures, she has presented keynote addresses or classes on various topics to schools, camera clubs, the Intermountain Regional Headquarters of the National Park Service, the Crane Trust, Denver Audubon, the Colorado Environmental Film Festival, and the North American Nature Photography Association. Cheryl is a 1992 honor graduate of Brooks Institute of Photography, holding a Bachelor of Arts degree in industrial scientific photography. That is a heck of a bio. So as usual, most everybody knows for new members, how this works is we're going to go through each image one at a time. I'm going to announce the title as it comes up on the screen, and then Cheryl is going to give her a quick little rundown of it, and she'll score it. And then we'll move on to the next video. We'll take after we get about 9 or 10 9s and 10s, we'll take a break to go back over and talk to the creators of those 9s and 10s and let them talk about what they, what they did, what edits they made, and generally speaking, how they created their beautiful piece of work. And if we have time, we'll take a break, like a 5-minute break midway through, but with this many images, I'm not 100% sure if we'll be able to do that. Make sure that all of you guys are muted if you aren't already. I see a lot of you are. Fred, why don't you go ahead and share your screen? Okay, so this first image is an image that we always start out the slideshow with, and that is just a calibration image. So you guys, everybody knows that Zoom likes to play around with the colors and tones and grays and blacks of our photos, and this will give you a good idea of what to expect. Now I can't see my notes. That's okay, I'm all good. Anyway,
Use your phone.
yeah, right. I think that's it. Let's rock and roll.
Well, thanks everybody for having me. Can everybody hear me okay?
Sounds great.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah, we got you here in the room.
Okay. All right, excellent. All right, great. Well, before we get started, I thought I would just tell you just quickly, I am trying to update my mailing list. So if anyone would like to join my mailing list, you can do that on my website, or you feel free to just email me. And I will add you. I've got quite a few trips coming up, and several are not on my website yet, so or haven't been because they filled or almost filled. So, the email list is the best way to keep up with what I'm doing. And I've got a Yellowstone winter trip that's next month. I have 1 spot left in that. It's not on the website. Of course, I always do the cranes in Nebraska. I'll also be running a trip to Bosque this year. I have a great trip to Costa Rica in April that will be up on my website soon, but we got a really good deal on the pricing for that. So if you're at all interested, please let me know. And then Svalbard, I still have some spots available for that in May. And, many of the other trips, Tanzania, Mexico, monarchs, the other things I do are on my website. But, feel free to just reach out to me because I'm happy to talk about trips you might be interested in, or let you know what else I'm doing. And then we'll get started here with the judging. Now, I did, just to let everybody know, I went through all of the images and I did open every single file. So I've looked at them all on my calibrated monitor. Now, they are, they're not raw files or full resolution files. So I still sometimes have to make just a judgment call on what I think the sharpness is. So I apologize if I don't get that right. But sometimes they do pixelate depending on what file size you set in. So I'm just kind of letting you know that I kind of have to make an educated guess sometimes, but I'm going to try and give you hopefully some positive feedback, obviously some constructive criticism, and hopefully you'll learn something and it'll help you expand your photography going forward.
Sounds great. Are you ready, Cheryl, for the first image?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. And I may just have to, I know that I printed everything out, so I may have to flip through my notes a little bit just to find all of these images that we have, but I'm so glad everybody's participating. It's great. Great to see so much great work. So, okay, go ahead and we'll start with the first one.
All right, this is light on light.
All right. So great. So, the first thing that really strikes me about this image is the color. I really do like how you've got the color of the lamp matching the sunset. I think all of that is working out really well. So, and I like, people who know me know I like silhouettes anyway. So I like the silhouette, but you can still see, an appropriate amount of light in the lamp. So you did really well with all of that. Things that I think you could do to improve the image. I think your exposure is good. It's sharp. Those technical things are good. But I would probably like to see the lamp straightened out. It is tilting into the frame. And I think it would make more sense to have it straight. And then you've also got wires and things in the bottom left of the frame, which I would just take and crop out. I mean, they're not necessary and they're distracting at the bottom. And I think you have plenty of space to do that. So, I think overall it's a nice image. I'm giving it an 8. So, I think with those improvements, it would raise up.
Right. Echoes of Adventure.
Great. Okay. Again, we've got another, and I like this approach. We've got another silhouette type image, but obviously we're using kind of the daylight behind to help create that silhouette. And I think the framing of the rocks is very nice. You did really well on your exposure. You've got nice color in the sky in the background and an appropriate amount of illumination on the rocks inside, and then the silhouetted people work very nicely. It's sharp. So all of those things are really good. The thing that I would change about it is the people, the way they're positioned on the rocks, they're kind of blending into the rocks. And you've got this really nice flat rock to the right. And so I probably would have just moved them over to that rock and positioned them so you could see more of their body shapes. I mean, it does look like it's sort of a posed picture anyway, so it looks like you had some control. So it would be nice to see, especially that second person, instead of having most of their body blending into the rocks, have them a little more separated from the background. And I think that would make it a much stronger image. But otherwise, your composition's nice and you did a nice job on everything. I'm giving that one an 8.
Archway to the Sea. All
right, black and white. And there were quite a few black and whites in the mix. So this is a really good example of framing. It adds a lot of interest to the scene to have that rock in the ocean framed by the structure. And I think, without that, the rock alone in the ocean wouldn't have been enough of a picture. So I think that was handled well. There are some technical issues on this image, and depth of field is one of the things that really needs to be worked on, because the foreground rocks aren't sharp and the rock in the ocean isn't sharp. And for me, this image really should be sharp from the very front to the very back. The other thing I would do is, I think you almost included too much of the surrounding rocks. I think that you could come in tighter and just focus more on the shape of the archway. I mean, get the top of it, but I think there's more than we need on the left and the right side of the image. So I would just come in and crop a little bit tighter on something like this. Your exposures are good, and you've got good tonal values in the image, but there are some other technical things that just need a little bit of work. So I do give it a 7.
A sky full of jellyfish.
Great. And another silhouette. So this image, the jellyfish looked really, really wonderful on the screen. So they were nice and sharp, and the patterns were great. And I really like the concept of the people in the lower right-hand corner. However, the person closest to the camera is out of focus, and I would prefer to see maybe just one person there and make sure that they're sharp and closer to the jellyfish so that that they frame the image, but I think when you've got three people blending in to each other, it's not as clear, that they're people looking. So I would have maybe just worked with one person on the side and waited for the others to move to see if I could really keep that person sharp. But otherwise, I mean, the color's nice and the jellyfish look great. So I'm giving it an 8.
Watching.
Great. There's a lot of images here. So again, I mean, this is a really beautiful animal that you were able to capture, and your sharpness, I know, was really good. And I think you especially did a very nice job on the eyes. I don't know if you did any selective dodging and burning on the eyes, but the eyes were just really nice and sharp on the animal. So the primary thing I think that's challenging about this image is the background. And it's busy, and it's really busy a lot because of the light that you have falling on the vegetation in the background. And it's creating kind of a hot spot that is very distracting. So, I think that there's a lot going for this. And if you could go in and just try and tone down the background some, with dodging and burning tools, that would help a lot. You could even maybe try and blur some of the background a little bit more, and it would really make the cat pop. And I think right now, if you look like where the feet are and the tail is, you're kind of getting pulled back to that bright spot. So take a look at what you could do with that background, and it'll really strengthen the image a lot, because I think the other elements are working really nicely. So I did give it a 7.
A day well spent.
Great. All right. So again, nice use of light in this image. I think it works really well to have that warm sunlight kind of reflecting in the back portion of the image. It pulls your eye, leads you into the image. The person that is a great sense of scale. Now, I know you were trying to use the foreground element kind of as a leading line, but I'm not sure that the foreground is interesting enough to justify as much space as it has. I would almost like to see you crop in quite a bit more on the image and really, really just concentrate on the shape of the sunlit area with the walls kind of framing in the person. I think that would make it stronger. So I think you could just simply by cropping the image, I think it would be stronger. And really, again, I talk a lot about when I'm teaching workshops, think about what your subject is and what you really want the viewer to see, and then make sure that everything else in the image is really supporting that. And if it's just taking up extra space that we don't need and not really getting you to where you want the viewer to look, then you can usually crop in quite a bit tighter. And I see that in a lot of people's work. They leave more in the image than they really need. So this is a case where I think it would be a lot better to crop in more. I did give it an 8. Technically, it looked really good. It was sharp and all of that was working well.
Discs.
All right, discs. Well, and I'm not really sure what the discs are. I will say they were very sharp on the screen, so you did a really good job. And I like abstract images personally a lot. So, I like that aspect of it. I think on this image, again, I think you could improve it quite a bit with just some cropping, because technically, again, it's very good. It's sharp from edge to edge. I like the color and the shapes, and the dark background's really nice because it makes the discs pop. But we have this big black area in the middle, and I'm not sure that that's really helping us. And there's actually, I don't know if you can see it that well on your screens, but there's actually a little fly in the image, which kind of makes a fun part of the subject too. So I would have probably cropped most of the right side of the image out and just used the curved shapes of the left disc and the bottom left disc, and then just included a little bit of the black and made it more of a vertical image. And I think that would have been stronger, but I'm giving it an 8. I mean, I think it's still technically executed well. So just some suggestions that I think would make it stronger.
Still standing tall.
So this image really, I quite like this image a lot. I think that it's the color that you were able to pick up in the sky, and even the texture in the sky kind of really matches up well with, and I don't know what kind of structure this is, but you've got the blue at the bottom that matches the sky, and then you've got the texture of the clouds that kind of match the texture on the surfaces. So, you know, I think all of that's working very well. Now, I can't tell from this image. So in a case like this, usually I would say use a PC lens and try and get your line straight. I can't even tell if the structure, you know, was manufactured straight or not. So it's kind of difficult to tell where you were with that. You might have been, you know, perfectly parallel, and it's just curved and different. But so that really doesn't bother me. I think the only thing I would do differently with this, if I were going to make a suggestion, is maybe just leave a tiny more room at the bottom, just because we're starting to crop in a little bit tight, and you want to have enough of a solid base that it's comfortable. So I would have left a little more room on the bottom. And I think I actually would have taken out the ladder that's on the left-hand side. I think it's just having the surface, repeating surfaces, I think would work just as well. But I did get this one a 10 because I think it's, you know, sharp, everything's working really well, and it's just nicely done.
Upstaging the competition.
So wildlife, which you all know is probably my favorite subject to photograph myself, just helps me remember for my notes. And mostly on my notes, I write down, you know, sharpness and things like that I can't see on the smaller screen. Okay, yeah, here we go. So this image was very, really nice and sharp. I mean, the bird and the feathers, all of the feathers were nice and sharp. I really like your composition, the curve of the branch coming in. I think all of that's working really well. And the flower's out of focus, but that's not your subject anyway, so I think that's fine. The background is reasonably blurred. It's not, you know, we don't have hot spots back there. So it's not super distracting. I do find the green leaf that's right above its head in the background a little bit distracting. And if you're not opposed to using Photoshop, that's something I would just take out. So, and I know, you know, people have different approaches. If you're doing a documentary, you know, trying to document things, then obviously you're not going to use Photoshop. I personally, you know, am an artist, so I don't mind using Photoshop. I want to, you know, create the cleanest image I possibly can. So I would consider taking that out if you're not opposed to that sort of thing. But I gave it a 9. I think overall it's really nice and the color's good.
Farm fresh eggs.
Yeah, so you actually had some really nice still life images in your submissions this month too. So that was also fun. I really enjoy doing this category because it is a fun, it's fun to see all the different styles of images and types. So I think this image, again, it has a really nice feel to it. I like the arrangement of the eggs and the rolling pin, and I like the background. The light, you know, the light is nice. It's a little bit maybe on the contrasty side. I think you could open up your shadows a little bit more just so we see a little more detail, you know, in the cloth and things that are around that egg that's on the cloth. The other thing I might try to do with this is just a slightly lower angle. I'd like to see the eggs just a little bit more against the background and just kind of let the table, you know, fade off into the background. So, but overall, I mean, it's sharp. It was really nicely handled. I gave it a 9.
Mazatlan street musician.
Yes, and another really nice black and white image. So, you know, this image, in terms of your tonal values, I mean, you did a great job. You've got really nice whites, nice blacks. You're not blowing anything out. The metal looks really good. I think you just did a really excellent job of your tonal balancing and your conversion to black and white. And I like your crop too. It's not always necessary to show everything in the picture. And I think that you did a great job on including everything that needs to be included and nothing that doesn't. So I really love this image, and it's sharp. You did an excellent job technically, so I gave it a 10. I think it's really, really nice.
Right, can you, 1 second, Cheryl, can you
Sure.
move the top part? There you go. Let you guys stare at that for a second before we move.
What did you give this?
A 10.
A 10.
Arkansas River Valley.
So I really like the high angle that you chose on this scene. I think that's it's a really nice vantage point to overlook the valley. And the road acts sort of almost like an S curve leading line through the image. It's very nice and sharp throughout the entire image. So all of that is working really well. I think the things that are kind of working against the image is it kind of lacks drama, and part of that is we don't have any clouds in the sky. And there's just not a lot of extra punch. So this would be a place where if you had an opportunity to go back again, I might try it a different time of day. And also some cloud formations, and that's something you could experiment with in Photoshop if you like to do that sort of thing. Do sky replacement. When I do that, I always like to shoot my own clouds that I can put in so that everything is my own work and stays very consistent. And you have to make sure the lighting and time of day is consistent. But I think that would help a lot to just add a little more drama to the image. So it's technically good. It's nice, but I think it could use a little more punch. So I did give it an 8. But try some of those things and that'll help it.
The portal.
So again, I mean, this is kind of a very simple graphic image, and I like that about it. Technically, again, it's very sharp, so I think you did well on that. From a compositional standpoint, I think it's centered a little bit more than it needs to be, and that could easily be corrected with a crop. So I think you have more, I probably would have cropped quite a bit of space off of the left-hand side and just really put the doorway in more of a, rule of thirds position. So I think that would have helped it. The other thing is I'd like to see the shadow maybe not covering the window that's inside the doorway. So if you could have waited a little bit to see if you could have shown a little bit more of that in the light. And also, if you would have gotten a little bit, if the shadow was a little bit lower, you also might have shown more of the yellow, which I think that yellow is a really nice complement to the scene. It's the only, spot of real color. So, just again, waiting for the light to change and taking, multiple images to see how those shadows can really work together would be good. But I like the simplicity of it. So I gave it an 8.
The tables don't always turn.
It's a good title too. And titles are important. They're good. So, on this image, again, you did a really good job on the technicals. The tonal values are nice. I like the way you lined up all the lines. So they're, either parallel or perpendicular, and they're intersecting nicely. All of that's, fine and working well. I just think, again, I think it just lacks a little bit of impact. I think it just needs something extra. Like I'd like to see something on the table, that just gives me a little more sense of what I'm looking at. I mean, I know the table's your subject, but it's not like the surface of the table has anything really interesting on it. So I think placing something on the table would have really added a lot to it, because it's just very simple, and graphic shapes and forms are fine, but it really it needs a little punch, in my opinion. So I gave it an 8. And there was quite a bit of, oh no, that's okay. There was quite a bit of black and white work. I mean, you guys are doing really well with your black and white. And one of the things that, again, this image technically, I mean, the depth of field was really good on it. There's really good detail, all the way through from front to back. So I was really impressed with that. I think that And the lighting, I mean, you did a good job on the lighting too, because that side light really helps to emphasize the texture. And this image is really a lot about texture. But I also think that you're showing more than you need to. So again, you know, the black background is nice. It helps to not distract from, I don't know what kind of lettuce it is or cabbage or whatever, but I think, you know, we've got good textures. I like the little water droplets, but I don't think we need the background at all. In fact, I would have cropped way in and I would have just concentrated on this front section where you've got the water droplets, and I would just have taken some of these textures and I would have cropped into where you don't even see the background and made it much more abstract. So, you know, I mean, I think it's nice the way it is. I just think it would be stronger if you just crop into it and really just emphasize those shapes and textures and the lines that you have that are really interesting and fascinating. I still gave it a 9.
Hanging on.
There was some nice macro work too. So that was fun to see. So this image, you know, everything that should be sharper, needed to be sharp, I think is, you've got a you know, appropriate amount of sharpness. And, you know, it's obviously really nice to have that smooth, blurred out background, because that really helps to emphasize the subject and lead the viewer right into where they should be looking. I like the kind of diagonal direction of the branch or flower that it's attached to. So I think that's working out well too. But again, this is an image where I think you could have cropped in more. I think it is distracting to have the, you know, magenta color blurred out in the background on the bottom left. And if you just cropped in quite a bit tighter, you really wouldn't even know that's down there. So I think that we just have more than we need to in the negative space. And sometimes I really like negative space, but when there's something that's going to pull my eye away from the subject, like the you know, bright magenta does, then I would definitely crop in tighter and just make sure it's an accent, but it doesn't start to pull my eye away from the subject. So I still gave it a 9. I think it's technically very good, but I would just crop quite a bit tighter.
Boys will be boys.
Again, and really another really great title. Very creative titles, which are important too. So I think pictures are worth 1,000 words, but words can help too. So there's nothing wrong with a good title. And I really like the layout of the people and the composition on this. I think, you know, all of that's working really well. The board has a nice diagonal angle. It's within the ocean. It's not merging out. So you're not having a line cutting through the board. I also like that a lot. So compositionally, I think this is all working really, really well. I think you could open up the shadows a little bit more in your processing. I would like to see a little more detail, if possible, in the shadowed areas of the people. So that's just a processing difference that I think you could make. This one was a little bit difficult too to see. If I think it was sharp, but it might be lower resolution. So again, if it's lower resolution, you can use programs like On1. They're resized, which is excellent, or even Topaz Gigapixel to, you know, increase the resolution of your image. And then I would crop in a little bit more. Again, we have more foreground water than we need, and we have more space on the right-hand side than we really need. But otherwise, it's got a really lot of nice things going for it. I gave it an 8.
Guardian of the Gorge.
You know, they did tell me they'd be all over the place. So anyway, I you know, this is, I like the feel of this image. I think that, you know, it's a nice atmosphere. I like the way that you have the clouds coming in. You've got good shadow detail. You've got enough detail in the building that balances with the sky. So, and I think that was a good choice. I mean, you could have let the building go in silhouette, but I don't think it would have been as strong that way, because you really do need to see some detail. So I don't know if you used an HDR program or not. I think you could probably use a little bit more contrast in the building and the landscape portion of the image. So again, I'm not sure exactly how you process, but I might just add a little bit of contrast in that portion of the image. But it's nice and sharp, and the colors balanced really well. So I gave it a 9. Nice composition too.
Rocky Mountain Meadow.
All right, another black and white. And so, again, I think you did a really good job on your tonal values in this. You've got, good blacks, you've got good whites, you didn't blow out your clouds. So all of that's working really well. I think this one's a little more challenging in terms of it's again, like technically done really well. It's sharp throughout the image. You've handled those things well. And compositionally for what it is, I think you did a good job. I think it's just kind of missing that extra, impact. It's more because of the scene. I think it's just there's not a real clearly defined subject. I mean, is the subject the trees or the pond? So I think some of those are things to think about in how you lay out the image. But technically you did really well. So I gave it an 8.
Swing High.
So I think this was really a creative crop. I like that you chose to, just include the feet and the shadows. I mean, again, this is a situation where you really didn't need the whole person in the image. I think it's much more effective and abstract to crop the way you did. So in terms of technicals, it did look like the highlights were blown out. So I would have liked to have seen a little more detail in the highlight portions. And that's just, an exposure issue. I suspect you blew them out in capture, so I'm not sure you can recover them in processing. And then I would have liked to have seen edge to edge sharpness on this. So you've got really good sharpness where the shadows are, but I would have liked to see a little more depth of field in it and with edge to edge sharpness. It's not terrible, but just a little bit more. The other thing I would do, and I really like the image, so I'm just trying to give you some helpful suggestions. But the other thing I would probably do, if you're again not opposed to it, is I would probably just take the portion at the top right that has that just triangle on the edge, and I would probably just make that into shadow area. Because again, like all of the lines are really leading me like toward the feet. And then I've got this bright area in the top right corner that starts to pull my eye back out of the picture. And I think if that were just shadow, and I don't think you can do it with just a crop, but you could do it with, selecting it and just replacing that area. So those are some of the things I think would make it better, but I gave it a 9. I really like the way you handled it. It's very creative.
Secret Garden.
So, I like the colors that you have in this scene. I think, it's a nice mix of the greens and the yellows, and I like the red flowers that are hanging from the trees. I think it's difficult because it's a very busy image. So, I'm thinking that you were thinking your subject was the building, but the building's so, and I know the title Secret Garden, so you're trying to give that sense of it's hidden, and you do that, but it's just so busy that it's hard for me to even identify the subject. So I think trying some different angles, maybe cropping in a little bit tighter. We do have kind of that bright spot in the background again that kind of pulls my eye toward the background rather than toward the building. So I think there are several things to work on here to make it stronger and really direct the viewer to where you want them to look. So I gave it a 7. And I think, again, I think just trying to really identify your subject and then direct the viewer so they're looking right where you want them to look and they're not getting pulled to a background. But the colors are great.
Atlantic Watch.
Right. Again, so on the black and white, again, I think you did a really nice job again on your tonal values and your conversion. There's good contrast. We've got nice blacks and good, highlight areas. On the composition, it's not it's not terrible, but if the subject is our buildings, I'm not sure we need so much on the right. I think the rocks on the right, while I really like them and they're very pretty, I think they pull my eye more towards the rocks, and I'd rather see either go to a square crop and crop some of that out, or show a little bit more on the left-hand side and really emphasize the buildings. I think you could almost do the rocks as their own sort of abstract picture, but in this, I would really try and focus in more on the buildings. There's also quite a bit of, and I don't know what it was in the water, but if you're not, again, opposed to using some Photoshop, I might clean up some of those patches. I don't know if it was foam or whatnot in the water, but I would probably just clean some of those patches up in the water to make it look a little bit smoother and cleaner. And then there is a little bit, I blew this one up, and there is a little bit of strange modeling in the sky. So I don't know what's going on there without looking at your raw file and talking to you more, but just in your processing, really, be careful not to create modeling. But I gave it an 8. Otherwise, I think it was technically nice and sharp and good.
Opening prep.
So, again, in this image, I mean, you did a nice job of using the table, as a leading line into the image, and the person adds a nice sense of scale. So those are always good things to keep in mind in our images, so that we're really, using those compositional techniques to again lead the viewer into our image. It's a really contrasty scene, and so I think, and again, it's not real dynamic. I mean, it's interesting, but I think we've got this really bright spot in the back that's blown out, and then we've got really dark interior. So I think balancing out the light a little bit more. I think I would have maybe gotten in a little bit closer to the person and not worried about the wooden benches you see on the left or so much on the right, and just really focused in on the repeating pattern of the chairs with the person, and maybe simplified the image more. Because again, I start to get pulled off to the left or the right. So, I really thinking about, what do I need in the image? What's interesting about my image, and what is my subject, and where do I want the viewer to look will really help you kind of get rid of things that are just going to distract the viewer and concentrate on the elements that are the most interesting. So I gave it a 7.
Wow.
So in this image, I mean, great use of 3 motorcycle riders. I mean, odd numbers work extremely well in images. Obviously, the red outfits are really strong. They contrast really well against the dark green, so you can see them. So, all of that's working really well. When you look at this on a screen and really zoom in, we really do need some more shadow details. So in your processing, if you can open up the shadows more, that would help a lot. And we do have some technical problems with the image that, again, without talking to you more and looking at your raw file and image, I can't really identify what's going wrong, but there is a strange band of softness that goes kind of through the middle. So it doesn't make sense. It's not a depth of field issue. There's something else going on, and I'm not really sure what's causing it. So, I think if you can work on those technical issues, you've got the right idea, but we just need to improve some of the technical aspects and open up the shadows and work on that. So I did give it a 6.
Ding long.
So again, I think, and we've seen this in several images, the use of leading lines that lead us back into the image. And so certainly the lamps in this image show a nice leading line back to the person, and the person provides a nice sense of scale. So, I think all of that's working. I do think the bottom of the image, is a little bit busy and it's dark. So, it's hard to really feel like it's adding a lot to the image. I don't know if you could have maybe cropped up a little bit more. but I probably would have brightened those areas so that I could see a little bit more of what's going on there. And then this is also an image that would benefit a lot from like a perspective control lens, because we're definitely, the buildings are leaning in. So we could straighten those lines, and I think that would make it stronger as well. You don't always have to have straight building lines, but when you're doing something like this, I think it is really nice to have the building straight. So I gave this one a 7. But good color and
Visible direction.
all right. So this image, it kind of has that old time, camera feel. I mean, it's almost like, it feels to me like almost like an old Polaroid or something. It's got that kind of feel to it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But it was a bit contrasty, when I blew it up on the screen. And again, I think, we've got a little person, which people are great for scale, but the person is so far back that it's hard to even identify that they're in there. So I think, moving around a little bit more to maybe emphasize that person more. I mean, there's this lovely steam coming up. I think if you could have positioned yourself closer to the person and put the person in front of the steam, and then use the mountains in the background to frame that, I think that would have been stronger. I don't know that the foreground is really telling me a lot. If I'm thinking about, well, what is my subject? I mean, the person and the mountains, I think the person's used more for scale. So the mountains are really what I think you're trying to emphasize. So, I think it could use some work. It's got a lot of good things going for it. And I think with just some repositioning and really thinking about where you place that person and how close you get, so they really show up. And I know you're trying to use this leading line, but I don't think that's really helping us. I think the more interesting part of the image is way past the leading line and back into the mountain area where the person is. So I gave that one a 7.
Moonscape sunrise.
This image, when you blow it up on the screen, really is lovely. I mean, it's got great texture throughout. It's sharp all the way across. It's got a nice kind of pastel feel to it. I think all of that's working really, really well. If there are a few things that I would recommend that you could do to improve it a little bit, is I would probably tone down the sun a little bit. It's starting to get a little hot where the sun is. And so I would just tone that down just a little bit. And I would probably let the person, it's not quite a pure silhouette. I would probably let that go a little bit darker too, and just let the person be more of a pure silhouette. And if you have any extra room to the left of the person, I would let there be a little more space. We're just getting a little tight on the person. I mean, the placements, it's nice, but we just don't have a lot of extra room to the side. So if you were going to frame it or something, I think you're going to be cropping in a little too tight to that person. But the image is really lovely. So I gave it a 10. But if you do have any extra room, just expand the canvas a little bit more to include that. But otherwise, I think, it's really a beautiful image.
Up early in the outback.
Okay. I wondered where that was. So again, this is a nice kind of more pastel looking image. The composition is nice. You did a good job with the rule of thirds. I think you've got a perfect balance of land and sky. When I looked at it on my calibrated monitor, it looked better than it's looking here on my laptop screen. It had, really just a nice balance between the land and the sky. I think the challenge with this image is that the sky is just not all that interesting. I love the way you've got the car and the light, and you balance the light of the headlights really well in the image. And you've got that nice, kind of curve leading into the picture. So all of that's handled really well. It just would have a little more impact if you had a nicer sky. So obviously your options are to, reshoot on another day to wait for a better sky, or, try some sky replacement and see if you could just add a more interesting sky with some pink clouds that I think would just give the image more impact overall. So let's see I'm giving this image an 8. but I would, just work on that a little bit, but it was sharp and nice. Oh, the rainbow was
Here's
really,
the rainbow.
yeah, really pretty. It was very, very nice rainbow. I don't know if you used a polarizer on it or not, but you did. It does look like it's been intensified a little bit, but not too much. I thought it was a very appropriate amount. Whenever I see, if I can get my polarizer out fast enough, when I see a scene like that, I will put a polarizer on, because you get much nicer rainbows if you can use a polarizer on the camera. You can do some, processing that pops those colors more, but it's really nice if you can do it in camera. So anything I can accomplish in camera, I will choose over doing it in processing. I mean, I think you want to always have the best capture you possibly can. So I like this a lot. I like the light on the mountains is really nice. I think that, again, in this image, we need a little bit more of a base. I would have liked to have seen a little more space at the bottom of the image. We just have kind of a sliver of land coming across, and I think we could use just a little bit more on the bottom. And then I almost would just either crop this square, because if you look at where the rainbow starts to split and you go up to the upper right, that part of the sky gets really bright. So it's pulling my eye again away from this really intense color that we have against the dark clouds in the middle of the image. So I would just crop the whole top of it off and make it square. And if you have any room, just add a little bit of room to the bottom. And I think you'd have a nicer balance in the image. But I did give it a 9. I think it's really nice overall.
All right, Colorado's rich heritage. And after this one, we're going to take a pause and go back through the 9s and 10s and talk to the creators.
Okay, sounds great. This image was very sharp. You did a really good job on the technicals. It was sharp all the way through, and you're not blowing out your clouds. You got good detail in your clouds. You might have been able to open up your shadows a little bit to get a little more detail in the shadowed portion of the wood, but it wasn't terrible. I think, again, the scene just sort of overall to me lacks impact. And part of it is just, it's a very interesting structure, but we've got the wires that are going across on the bottom left. And so, it's a nice image. It's just, it could use a little, again, that it factor or something extra. So this is an image where, if I don't know where this is, but if you could go back, I would try this at like sunset and make it a silhouette and just get lower to the ground and use all of these interesting shapes and patterns. I think something like that would really turn this location into something that would really pop. So yeah, I gave it an 8. I mean, technically it's good and the color's good and all of those things are good. I just think you could work it to make it more impactful at a different time of day.
Still standing, and this one is Todd Lytle.
Thank you, Cheryl. I drive a lot around the country and Kansas quite a bit, so I don't know. I mean, I guess it was just at least halfway decent lighting, and so I was having fun. But I did take note of the things you mentioned. And I used the, I don't know what you really call it, kind of auto perspective button in Lightroom. And,
yes.
And I actually thought it did a horrible job, but it was midnight or thereabouts. And I didn't have time to mess around with it. So I think it's a little top heavy if I look at it closely versus the original. And I had at least half of the image available to me below that, including tire tracks in the mud. But I don't mean.
Well, you don't want the tire tracks, but I mean, you want the clean, nice base. But if you had a little more that was kind of clean.
Yeah, I think I did. I mean,
yeah.
I'm not going to spend any more time on it. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
I appreciate your comments, and I, quite frankly, was shocked that it got a good score. So
no, I think it's fun. It's nice.
Once in a while, a blind squirrel finds a nut. That's especially true in photography competitions, I believe. Thank you.
You're welcome.
This one is Upstaging the Competition by Gary Witt.
This is a green honey creeper, believe it or not. The female is very limey green, and that's where the species gets its name. This was taken in Ecuador last January. I debated about that leaf over and over again. I wondered if the judge would be upset with the flower being out of focus, but I really realized that subject was what was the important thing. And so those were the two things that I spent a lot of time debating with, I guess. I did mute the background a little bit more and take out some of the highlights that were a little poppy, but I really
That was a good choice.
I
Yeah.
really focused on the bird, and then when I realized that our judge was a wildlife photographer, I swallowed hard about submitting it because I am a birder and I love taking pictures of birds, but I rarely submit them in competition because it's so hard with those things moving around as much as they do to get what I think is a competition worthy photo. But this happened to be one, and I appreciate your comments and the score.
Yeah, no, it's really nice and sharp. So you did that really well. So I would just take out that leaf, you know, and I think you'll have a really strong image there. And good choice on, you know, diffusing those spots in the background. That definitely was a good choice.
All right. Farm Fresh Eggs is by Barbara Masonville.
Mhm. Thank you, Cheryl, very much. I appreciate your comments, and I see what you're saying about it being a little too contrasty and opening up the shadows a little bit, and also a slightly lower angle where the eggs are up a little bit higher. I appreciate it. Thank you. And I'm enjoying your critiques on all the other images as well.
Oh,
Thank
good.
you very much.
No, you're very welcome. I'm glad it's helpful.
I'm taking notes.
Sounds good.
Okay, Mazatlan Street Musician is Kiefer Hunterford.
Hey, so I took this last month. It was a portrait, but I just cropped in. I just loved his hands. I don't really understand why it pops so well. I think he was standing in shade. It was midday. He was standing in shade, and it just kind of pops, and I don't really know why. It was in an area with a lot of white stone and white, so maybe he was just getting lit from all angles. But I just really enjoy it.
Well, and a lot of times if you're in situations like that, and you may have been in the situation where light is hitting a building nearby, it acts like a big reflector. And so even though he's in the shade, it looks to me like you were getting really nice reflected light off a building or something. So the quality of your light's really excellent.
Yeah, I lucked out on the light for sure. It's also, I'm a big fan of white lantern lenses. They're my thing right now. They just have a lovely micro contrast like that.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your feedback.
You bet. Good job.
After Weston is by Laura Blake. Yeah, thanks for the idea of cropping in the textures of the cabbage. So she says, thanks for the idea of cropping in on the textures of the cabbage. I never considered that. I am enjoying your critiques.
Oh, great. Thank you.
All right. Joy,
Now let's see if
Joy Lindholm is the creator of this hard to find photograph. Very
Sure.
rare.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is, I like to take a lot of photographs of especially native bees. We've kind of designed our landscape to attract as many as possible. So I take quite a few of these, but this was a challenge because this bee, this is a Rocky Mountain bee plant. I don't know if any of you have bees or are familiar with them. This is a type of sweat bee that is about the size of a grain of rice. And they move around pretty quickly. So this was definitely a challenge for me. Above and beyond what I'm normally used to. So, quite a fun subject. It took me about probably 50 or 60 tries to get this image. So thank you, Cheryl, for your comments about the cropping. I actually cropped this down quite a bit from the original. I had even more of the kind of pink flower in the corner. And I wanted to keep a little bit of that reference, but I see what you're saying, and I appreciate your comments.
Well, you're welcome.
Nice work, Joy.
Yeah, macro is a real challenge too, so.
This is Guardian of the Gorge by Brian Donovan.
Yeah, this is the Gullybeck Fortress. Was originally built in the 14th century and is located on the Serbian shore of the Danube River. Took that this fall on a trip down the Danube. Thanks for all your comments.
Beautiful. Swing High is Steve Wilton.
Yes, echoing Barbara Masonville's comment. Tonight's great. It's like a class of photography. I really enjoy all these critiques. On this particular picture, I went into Lightroom after you critiqued it, and I brought it in. I love square formats, so the aspect ratio. So I simply cropped it in to get rid of that, all that at the very upper right corner. So it's just the black shadow.
Yeah.
And that really worked. Also in the left corner, I went in and softened all of that down. Did a pretty good job getting rid of that. So thank you. That really improved the photographs, your critique. Thank you.
Good. I'm glad it helped.
All right, Moonscape Sunrise is Bob Corson.
Hello, Cheryl. Welcome back
Hey.
from Mexico. Good to
Thank
see
you. Good to talk to you too.
Yeah, it's been a while. So I kind of got out of competitions for a while just because kind of got burnt out. But this is one of my favorite places. I go 3 times a year to one of my favorite areas near Hanksville. I camp here. Literally, I sleep on top of my Forerunner, literally 5 feet from that overlook, and see this morning. This is 30 shots. It's 6 panos, 5 stacked each. And luckily I got a camera guy because I was sitting there, how can I do this if I run up there and put myself there? Yeah, we just got the perfect sunrise just at the right time. You got to be there at like 4 a.m. And then it's funny how many people come at 7 o'clock. And then I also now have a drone, so it's pretty cool. But this thing came out better than I thought. And then you brought up the comment of trying to tone down the sunrise. I think I tried to do that, and I was getting a little kind of grayish tone, so it was very hard to try to figure that part out. But thanks so much. Great to see all the pictures and all the comments, because that's really what this is all about for me. Just seeing how images are taken and getting perspectives. But thanks so much for the I want to point
Did you say that was that Moonscape Overlook outside of Hanksville, Factory Butte?
Yep.
Yeah,
That's why it's called. I think it's called Moonscape Sunrise.
Yeah, I hate you because I've been there 5 or 6 times, twice last year, and that just really pisses me off.
Well, thank you.
In the absolute nicest way that I could have said that. It's one of my favorite places too. I go to Hanksville at least once a year, twice last year, twice the year before. And that blows my mind. And I think I saw you camping there.
Probably. I got a blue Forerunner with a roof nest. But anyways, this is my first competition in about 3 or 4 years. So thank you very much, Cheryl.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was amazing. And if you come up with one with Factory Butte that looks like that, I'm going to punch you in the face.
I got that one too.
Damn it.
All right, let's move on. This is Mesa Rainbow by Bill Ruffenmeyer.
Yes, I took this it was lucked out at Colorado National Monument.
Awesome.
I really appreciate your suggestions and ideas. I can't wait to go and try some of the post-processing things I can do with this picture. But thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, Fred, we're gonna go back to the show.
Okay,
Okay,
figured that one out.
good. This is ghost trees.
Trees, all right. You know, obviously this one, well, I don't know how well you can see it on the screens there, but it was taken at night because you can see the stars in the sky. So, you know, I really like the angle you chose looking up at the trees and seeing the stars through the trees. I think that was a very nice perspective and a good choice.
Yeah.
I don't know what you had lighting the trees, but it's a nice, you know, it's a nice soft light that's appropriate for a nighttime picture. There are technical issues though with the image because the trees don't look real sharp. So, you know, that's something that you really need to work on, and it's hard to do when you're working in a darker environment. So, you know, sometimes I'll use a flashlight and try and just, you know, focus on an area with a brighter flashlight first to make sure I've got it really dialed in for sharpness. And then I think the color shift, you know, whatever light source was hitting the trees is causing sort of a strange color shift. So that's something that could be dealt with in processing. And I would just, it looks, you know, kind of on the greenish side. So I would probably take some of that out and make it look a little bit more neutral. So, you know, I think with some additional processing work, but you definitely do need to go back and really make sure you've got that focus dialed in at the time you take the picture. So I gave that one a 7.
The Golden Path.
Golden path, yes. So you know, again, you know, a nice use of the path as a leading line. You know, that helps to lead the viewer into the image. And you've got nice, you know, nice fall color in the trees. So I think that's all working well, except that I do think with the color, you do have a little bit of an overall yellow cast. And so again, that's something that can just be dealt with in processing. So I would go back and take a little bit of yellow out, because if you look at the trunks, especially the one at the left side, it's looking more yellow than it should. So we'd like to see, you know, the aspen trunks looking more white and the leaves looking yellow and green. So I think you could just balance that out a little bit. You had really good depth of field through the whole image. So all of that's working well. This is an image too, and I don't often use a perspective control lens in landscape, but this is an image where I might try that. You know, trees lean as well, and of course, they're not perfectly straight, but a lot of times a perspective control lens can be really fun to use with trees to make sure that you're as parallel as possible. So, you know, I think that with some of those corrections, it'll improve the image. You do have pretty good tonal values in the image, but you know, I think it just could use a little more punch to it. So go back and work on your processing. I did give it a 7.
The Secret Passage.
So again, I like the use of black and white on this image. I think that was a really good choice. I know it's a fascinating looking room. I think one of the things, it looks really sharp. It looks like I don't think the walls were probably built straight anyway, and we can't tell with the books, you know, what's really straight or not. But it does look to me like you got your lines fairly straight, because on the right-hand side, you know, it seems like you've got a pretty good line there. And I suspect it's older, so I suspect it's not all straight anyway. But and it looked nice and sharp. But I think one of the things that I would have experimented with is I feel like this, you know, hidden door is almost like kind of blocking my view to what's behind it. So I'd almost like to, you know, open it more and see more of what's behind there. And I probably would have stepped maybe to the left a little bit more and taken the windows that are in the background out completely and just let it go to the bookshelves, because again, I think what makes this really interesting are the repeating patterns of the books. And I think just having the blank windows that we see through that, and we're just seeing a little bit. So I'd like to see a little more of the books and maybe get those windows out. But otherwise, technically, I mean, I think you did a good job of execution. So just something to think about if you're ever in this situation again. Try not to block the viewer, try and really lead the viewer to the back of the image. And I just feel like I'm getting blocked. Hopefully that makes sense. But I gave it an 8.
Hey, Cheryl, real quick, I have a question from the comments. When you say a perspective control lens, do you mean like a tilt shift?
Yes.
Okay.
That's exactly what I mean, a tilt shift lens.
Great, thank you for the clarification.
You bet.
This is the Baker's Bricks.
All right, yes. And again, I think black and white was a very good choice for this image as well. And I love the repeating patterns. I think the place where the image isn't as effective is in the background. And again, if you look beyond the bricks, the background is really, really busy. So this is another image where I think you could make it, a lot better just by cropping. I would just crop way into the foreground. I don't even think I'd get the top of the bricks. I would just get all the circular patterns with enough of the base that it's comfortable, but I would just go in and just get all the circular patterns and make it an abstract image. And so when I pull these up on my computer too, I'll crop them and I'll do it on my computer so I can sort of visualize it myself as well. But it just, that to me is the interesting part of the image. And then I would just brighten that area up a little bit more and give it more contrast. But really right now my eye is going straight to the background. And that's not what you really want people to look at. So this one could just be reprocessed and recropped. And I think it would be a much, much stronger image. Oh, there it is. Yeah. So I gave it an 8.
All right, this one's titled Gotcha.
So again, a bird photograph, and you capture just a great moment here. You did a really good job of choosing your shutter speed. Everything's frozen. The image looked really, really sharp again. So all of that's working really well. The problem, again, you probably already know what I'm going to say, is the background's really busy. So, we've got these, again, really light patches in the background that, again, pull my eye away from the subject. So this is an image where, if you wanted to spend some time in Photoshop, I think you could select the bird with the fish, and you could go in and use some blur tools and maybe even some dodging and burning tools to make the background not so busy and not so distracting. And that would make it, a much, much stronger image. But in terms of, the technical choices you made for the bird itself and stopping the action and getting good feather detail, all of that you did really well. So I gave it an 8.
Factory Butte.
All right. So this image, again, I think, the lighting is really nice. I mean, you've got this, pastel light that's just hitting the top of the butte, and that works really well. Your composition is fine. I think you did a nice job of including enough sky, but not too much. And you have enough of a base that it's comfortable. I think primarily with this image, to make it stronger, I would play with the contrast more and maybe even the saturation a little bit. I think that it just, I think I'd like to see the light itself pop a little bit more. So I'd maybe even darken down the main portion of the butte more and really, really show that light is just popping. Because right now it's nice and soft and pastel, but I think it would have more impact if we had more contrast and a bigger difference between the darker areas and the light areas. And you could even let the color cast go more blue. I don't think it would hurt to just let the shadows go blue in this situation, which will really pop out that orange. So I would play with that a little bit. I gave it an 8.
This is window blind under repair.
So, and this is a good example that you can make anything into an interesting abstract photograph. I mean, I think you took a very ordinary object and used a really nice composition to highlight it. I like I like the fact that you've got all of these kind of lines working together and blending in, and then you've got the texture of the carpet. Now, from a technical standpoint, I would have really liked to have had more edge-to-edge sharpness on this, so a little bit more depth of field because the corners are going soft and falling off a bit. And I'd also probably open up the shadows just a little bit more. I mean, I think you've got a nice white, you've got nice blacks, but I'd like to see just a little more detail in those gray areas without losing too much of the contrast, because I do think the contrast is nice. But I would try and open that up a little bit. So I gave this one an 8.
Morning on a misty Oregon beach.
So I like the feel of this. I mean, I like the misty kind of feeling. I think it's nice that it's a long panoramic image. I think compositionally that works well. You probably could take a little bit off of the right side. I'm not sure we need as much space on the right as you have there. I like having the 3 people. They give it a sense of scale. They're not merging into one another, so that works. They do look like they might be a little on the soft side, and it's hard to tell with the resolution file I had whether that's just the fog in the air that's doing that, or if it's really a sharpness issue. So look back at that. I would probably also come in and on the left bottom corner, I think I would soften some of these darker patches and get rid of those tracks that are in I don't know if it's sand, probably sand. Get rid of the track lines that are in the sand, because again, I think what really makes this image nice is kind of you've got these really soft white tones and then the darker people and the darker vegetation in the background. So I would try and make the foreground really kind of blend more to white so that you're just really focusing in on what's in the back. But I gave it an 8.
The last basket.
So again, I mean, some really nice still life images that people submitted, and those are a lot of fun to see. I had to do a lot of that in school. I'm not a still life photographer, or it was probably one of my least favorite things to do, but I do really admire when people do a good job with it. And I think what makes this image so nice is just, the lighting and the pattern with the apples. So I think all of that's working really well. And when I looked at it on my monitor, you can see more detail, or I could on my monitor than I do on my laptop. So it was a little bit brighter on my monitor, I think, which helps the image. I mean, you want to see enough detail in the walls that you can identify the place. But a few things I would do to the image. One is I would crop more into the window so that you're only getting just the very bottom portion of the window with the green only. I think the white areas that are at the top of the window on the top left side, again, are distracting. And all we need to see is enough of that window to know that the window is creating this ray of light. And then I would also come in your processing, and I would try and lighten the ray a little bit more. I think you can see it's there, but I think you can just brighten it up enough to really just show that it's really hitting those apples and creating the pattern on the floor. So I would try and brighten that up a little bit, but I gave it a 9. I mean, I really like the feel of it. So try playing with those things to improve it a little bit, but it's very nice.
Kenzie and fabric.
We had some portraits too. So this was one of the few studio portraits, which again is also a lot of fun to put together. And I think this is it's really nicely done. I like the fact that you broke the rule of thirds and you centered it. I think for this image that works really well. I like how you focus the light in, just on kind of the top portion of the subject. You've got nice light hitting the hair. It's very tastefully done. So I really appreciate that. I think, the way the fabric flows down is nice. I might have, I do really like the image, but if I were going to change it, there are a couple of things I would do. I would like to see the fingers on the hand that's pointed down. I think it kind of almost looks like that hand is disappearing. So I would have probably just had the fingers out so that you can see that, it's a complete hand. And then when you zoom in on this image on the computer, the eyes are a little bit dark. So I would go in and just select the eyes and brighten the eyes a little bit so that they pop a little bit more. But otherwise I really thought the image was very well handled in the backgrounds. The lighting on the background and everything fades in so nicely. So I did give it a 10.
Tree line.
So I think, I think the choice of going to black and white with this image was a good one. Again, because you've got a variety of tones in the trees, but you don't have a lot of interest in the sky. So I think, going to black and white helps the overall image. It's just, this is again one of those tough situations where I think you did a good job with what you had to work with. I like the shape of the trees and the way you used the trees to frame the mountain, but it's not a particularly interesting mountain and we don't have any clouds in the sky. So I think the image kind of lacks impact for those reasons. I think you did well with what you had, but again, it's just, maybe waiting for a different time of day, seeing if you could get some more clouds. The composition is good. I think if you had a little more interest in the overall scene, maybe more dramatic light, more dramatic clouds, that sort of thing. So I did give it a 7.
White birches by the creek.
And again, I like the fact that you took this image to black and white. I think that it's a nice contrast to the white birch against the darker forest. The image does have some pretty significant technical issues, and it doesn't look sharp at all. It looks like camera shake. So, again, you probably didn't use a tripod. But in this scenario, you either have to really speed up the shutter so that you don't have any motion or camera shake, or use a tripod. And I think, again, if you put it on a tripod, you can do things like use a slower shutter speed and blur the water that's coming out. And then I think you would get maybe more interesting, patterns in the water. And I probably in that case would have shown a little more water and that sort of thing. So you've got some nice things that are there to work with, but I think we've really got to go back and work on our technical aspects of it so that we have a sharp image. And then I would play, like I said, with shutter speeds on a tripod and really try and use that water to help, give it kind of a flowing look. So, but I gave it a 6.
Waiting and watching for the train.
Yeah, and again, this works really well in black and white. I like the repeating patterns. I like the reflection, and I know you probably placed your subject where he is because of the water and the reflection, but compositionally, I think that causes us a problem. So, because again, we always want to have space for the subject to look into. And so when you put the subject at the right portion of the frame and he's looking in that direction, we just don't have a comfortable amount of space. So a couple of things you could have done is you could have turned your subject around so the subject's looking down the hallway. And then you'd still have the subject in the reflection, or you could have just, and I don't know what you had to work with, but you could have moved further to the right yourself and then placed the subject at the back of the image more so that you had more of the pattern in front of your person instead of behind him. So just, really thinking about how the composition works with your subject is important. I'd also probably brighten the image up a little bit more. It looked sharp, so all of that's working well, but I think we need just a little more brightness and a little more shadow detail to make it pop a little bit more. So I gave it a 7.
Wild, this is a bench in Paris.
That's what I was with.
Was that right? Yeah.
Oh, we're
bench in-
going, okay, bench in Paris, great. So again, the black and white, I think again works really nicely for this image. I think it's much more effective in black and white. The image looked very sharp. Compositionally, I think you did, pretty well. I mean, you definitely have your negative space where the woman is looking, so that's working well. I might have left a little more space to the right of the bench, just because we start to feel like we're crowding the bench a little bit, but your base is really nice and you can see the texture of those stones. Your contrast is good. You've got a good white, you've got good blacks. I think you probably could open up the shadows just a little bit more to get a little more shadow detail, especially under the table and in the dark bird feathers and things. So just a little bit. And then the other thing I would think of, I mean, overall, I do really like the image, but I think the line that is going through the stone wall behind them is cutting right through their heads. And so, these are like just little details that as you get more aware of your overall picture, you'll start to see them. But I don't like to have strong lines like that cutting through the subject. So I would have either gotten lower so that line was maybe cutting more to where the bench was and their heads are in the other portions of the stone where the lines are softer. Or, conversely, you could maybe stand on a ladder and put that line up above or crop it out entirely. But hopefully you can see what I'm talking about with the dark line of stone going right through the head area. So, that's something I would think about when you're looking at an image. You don't want to put things in the background that kind of split parts of the image if you can avoid it. So I gave it an 8.
Wild Haven in the Fjord.
All right. Yeah. So now this is really it's a beautiful image on the screen. I mean, the lighting is just wonderful. You've got, and you may have done some dodging and burning, but you did a very, very good job with it. It's just, your eye goes exactly where you want it to, on the building and on that part of the landscape. So it leads you right into the building that's, the subject. So this is just such a good example of using light to direct the viewer. And the composition is nice as well. The only, and I'm, being really nitpicky here, the only thing I would do is I would take a sliver off of the left-hand side because there's just a little piece at the top left of vegetation that's annoying me. I mean, a tiny little bit. I'm being really nitpicky. And then again, on the right-hand side, I would just come in a little bit over there too. You can see a little piece of vegetation sticking in that's light. And I don't think you need, I think you can lose a little bit on each side and you'll be just fine. But otherwise, I think the image is really beautiful and I gave it a 10.
Fishing for sunlight.
So this is another good example of using light to, direct the viewer, because you do have really nice light hitting the rock that's in the ocean. So I think that's all working really well. But I think there are quite a few technical problems with the image. So the fisherman is not sharp at all. And I do think in a scene like this, even though I would not say the fisherman is your subject, I think the rock is your subject and the fisherman is kind of supporting the subject, but he's not sharp and I think he should be. And also, again, placement of the fisherman. He's looking kind of almost straight off to the left. So it would have been stronger to either, if you have the ability to ask him to move him to the right side of the image so that, again, he's kind of pointing and directing you back toward the rock, or, you might have been able to get him to turn. And you could have maybe moved your position a little bit to the left to try and have everything pulling you toward the rock and not pulling your eye away from the rock. And you could experiment, you could experiment with slower shutter speeds. I mean, when you've got a person, you'd have to ask them to be really still if you want them to stay still, but you could experiment in a scene like this with slower shutter speeds, which could be really nice. But your quality of light's really good here. So, it's just kind of working on those technicals and thinking about how you're composing things and how they're leading people into your picture. So I did give it a 6, but hopefully that gives you some good suggestions to look for next time.
Controlled chaos.
All right. Okay, and this was it's a very nice image. It's nicely composed. I like the square format. I think you're a little bit tight again on your composition. I mean, I think we could use just a little more room to the front, and we're almost cropping into that back foot of the horse on the left side. So, we want to make sure we give everything enough space that it's comfortable. So if you have a little bit of extra room to just add a little bit of space on the right and on the left, I think that would help. But I think, it's really nice how the dust is coming up. I think that adds a lot of atmosphere to the scene and works really well. I would also open up your shadows a little bit more. I think we would get a more pop to the image if you could just, brighten these shadows in the horses, and that would also brighten the shadows with the person as well. But everything was really nice and sharp, and the expressions are good, and so I think you did a really nice job overall on the image, and I gave it a 9.
Time machine.
So I like the again, the black and white and the silhouette nature of this scene. I think all of that's working well. I think you did a good job on the cropping. You might have been able to leave a little more space on the bottom, maybe go a little bit more square. I'm not sure you're perfectly square, so I might go a little more square and have a little more floor if you have it there. But primarily, I think that the thing that would have made this even stronger is just moving the person to the left a little bit to where his head is in the white space of the circle. Because right now we've got his head merging with all these other lines. And all we would have had to do is ask him to take a step to the left. And I don't think the arm is as important. It could be merging into the other lines and things, but I think it's very important to have the face and the head separated as much as we can. And you might have been able to even have him look a little more in profile so we could really see his nose. So again, when you're in a situation like this, I mean, even if you're just trying to catch things as you can, I'll ask strangers, I'll say, hey, I'm trying to do this picture. Would you mind, stepping to the left a little bit? Then a lot of times people are happy to accommodate. So, just really thinking about, how do you separate things so that they don't get mixed up and blended together? How can you make the elements really stand out so the person is more identifiable? But I really like the graphic nature of this in the black and white. So I gave it an 8. And it's a good title too. I like that.
Bumblebee.
So again, I like your choice of black and white on this. I think it works, a lot better in black and white than it would have in color. And I also, I like the fact that you guys are thinking about, cropping into things instead of showing the whole scene, trying to zoom into, the heart of the action in the image. We don't always need to see everything. I think it's much more effective to just show parts of a scene, and that's working well. Now, I think the lighting really works well in your favor here because you've got darker background and it's rim lighting, the leg and the bubbles and all of that. So that's working really well. I think that the challenge on this image, I mean, it's nice and sharp, so you executed that well and you did a good job of your exposure. I think that the big black area at the top, is again kind of a block, and you could potentially crop some of that out. But I would have maybe tried a lower angle and maybe tried to use that black background if you could have, to really show off the bubbles and even the leg. I don't know if you could have gotten on the ground, and I don't know how much black there was, but the black is really effective. And if you look at what you have behind the foot, it's busier. So I would have tried to simplify, if at all possible, by trying to really use that black background a little more effectively. But you know, I like the concept. I gave it an 8.
Over the fence.
So again, I think your choice of black and white was really good on this image. I think it's much more effective in black and white than it would have been in color. I like the fact that it's really well done in terms of your depth of field, because we can tell that there's a fence there, but it's so subtle that it just gives us the impression. And I think you just did that perfectly. So I really like that aspect of it. You know, the challenge, I think, in this image is that your subject and having a person there is perfect. And, you know, the placement of the person is in the frame is pretty nice, but I would have liked to have had the person sitting more in that light spot. I think you can probably see how the light above him, it's just off to the left of him a little bit. And again, you know, this might have been a situation where you wouldn't be comfortable or couldn't have asked him to move over. But if he could have moved over about 4 feet and, you know, sat in the spot that's the brightest, I think that would have been more effective. And then you could have maybe cut a little bit off of the right side to get the bright spot that's hitting off the right side, maybe just come into where that's just out of the frame. So, you know, a lot of things are really going well in the image, but I think there could be little subtle things that would improve it quite a bit. So I gave it an 8.
Where shadows bend.
You know, I love snow patterns and things like this. I think they're wonderful. And you get all these little bright crystals in the snow and all of that showing up, you know, really nicely. So you know, and you did a good job with your exposure. We've got good texture in the snow, and we don't have any spots that are blown out. So all of those things you did, you know, you did really well. There is a bit of a depth of field issue. And in an image like this, since it's really texture based, I'd really like to see it sharp all the way from front to back. So, you know, if you're not able to get the depth of field you want in one shot, if you're using a tripod, and if you know me, I'm a big advocate for tripod use because there's so much you can do when you use a tripod, but you could even focus stack something like this. And that allows you to get, you know, pretty much unlimited depth of field. So, you know, I would try that. And then the other thing is, you know, the lines are nice, but I would have liked to have maybe seen a slightly different angle where you're using the lines of the shadows to kind of lead you into the picture. Again, we have these lines kind of coming across the image, and I think it would have might been nice to step over to the left a little more and see if you could have used the lines to help lead the viewer into the image. And again, I'm not on scene, so I don't know what you had there and if that was even possible, but just something to think about for next time. But I gave it an 8.
Morning yoga.
So I think this is a very effective silhouette. You know, the shape of the person is really ideal. I mean, you did very, very well to make sure all the fingers are showing. I mean, we can see she's grabbing the foot, but we can tell there are fingers there. We have such a good profile. When you blow this up, you can even see eyelashes. So, you know, you have the nose and the lips and the eyelashes. So it was really, really well done in terms of a silhouette. And I love the way, you know, you placed her in a really good spot with the color. And I really like the image. I did give it a 10, but the improvements that I would make, that I would consider, one is I do think the sunspot's a little bit hot, so I would try and tone that down just a little bit if you can, and you should be able to. And then the other thing, and this is kind of a personal call, is I do not like the out of focus trees that are in the background. Now, if you were reshooting this, I would say just get a little bit lower angle so you just have this sharp edge of grass below her and you don't see those trees. But if if you're not going to reshoot it, that's something, again, you could probably take out in Photoshop. I think those out of focus trees in the background, while they're not merging into her, they are distracting to me when I blow it up. So that's something I would consider. But I did give it a 10. I think it's a beautiful image.
Beef Peepin.
All right. So, on this image, you've got really nice light hitting these colored leaves. So we're getting really beautiful color coming through those leaves. And I like the way, I think you've got the right idea of trying to use them to frame the scene. I think what's challenging about this image is just that the branches are so busy. So, and, I think you did really well with the situation you had, but there's just a lot going on. And so, I would have maybe tried to see if I could find more of an isolated branch and maybe done a tighter shot of the mountain with a branch hanging over it or something. I think we just have a lot of branches sticking into the image from every which way. And I think that kind of confuses the viewer a little bit. It does look sharp, so I think you're doing well with that. But again, like keeping images simple, trying to simplify them as much as possible really helps the viewer know where to look. So just think about that as you're evaluating a scene. I gave it a 7.
The Offering.
All right. So this, again, I like that you use black and white. I think it's a much more effective image in black and white. I think your composition is really nice. It's simple. We see everything that's going on. You have a nice amount of space, above his head and below. The primary issue with the image is that you needed just, I think, a little more depth of field, or you may have just focused back a little bit too far, because I'd really like to see the hand sharp, and the hand did not look sharp on my screen. So again, whenever you're taking a picture like this, just remember, for the most part, unless you're doing macro, you're usually pulling more depth of field behind the place where you focus than you are in front. If you're doing macro, it's about 50-50 actually. But if you're doing landscape or wider scenes, usually you pull a little bit more focus behind your point of focus than you do in front. So changing that focusing point or just stopping down a little bit more would have helped. But I did give it a 9.
Lonely Drive.
So I really like I know this isn't like realistic color, but I like the feel of the color. I mean, it makes it feel like a kind of historical scene. And I really do like that about the image. So I think that was a really good choice. I mean, it's not an image that I think would be effective at all if you had tried to make it look like normal color. So I like the dust kicking up. I think the positioning of the truck is good. I even like the fact that you used more sky than land, with the rule of thirds. I think that's fine. The thing that I think that's challenging for me in this is that the texture that you used in the sky, and it does look like you used some texture, which I'm not opposed to texture at all. I actually quite like. I mean, I'm an artist. I consider myself an artist, so I like doing things like that myself as well. But the texture, whatever you used, has a lot of like really hard spots in it that just make it look dirty and almost like there's just dirt on it instead of really a texture. So like the textures that are going on in the upper corners, I would have liked to have seen more of that type of texture across the sky and not the points of dark spots that just look like dust. So I would work on that. I gave it an 8, but I think it's a nice feel.
Waterways of the Past.
All right. So I don't know if you took this with a drone or from a helicopter, but it's really nicely done. I mean, it's very sharp from edge to edge, which I think is important when you're doing something like this that has so much texture. Yeah, I think you cropped it nicely. I mean, you've got good lines, a good balance. I think they lead you through the image nicely. So I gave it a 10 overall. I think it's really nicely done. The only thing I might play with a little bit more, if you want to, is I probably would have maybe played with saturation and given it a little more pop of color. I mean, that's totally personal choice. I just would like to see it with a little bit more color. So, but I think it's beautiful the way it is too. So it's kind of what you want to do with it.
Beholden to yellow.
Okay, so another macro shot. And again, you know, I mean, I know macro is really challenging. It's probably, again, in nature photography, it's probably one of my least favorite things to do because you do have to have a lot of patience. And I do have a lot of patience, but macro is really hard because the subject's moving around and you've got such a narrow depth of field and you've got to get everything sharp. But I think you did a really good job with getting really good sharpness on the insect. And you've got a nice blurred out green background that really complements that yellow. So all of that, I think, is working extremely well. I think the primary issue with this image, again, is I think you have more in the image than you need because the flowers that are, you know, below the flower that has the insect and to the side are out of focus. So to me, they're pulling my eye away more. So again, I would have just cropped really tight into this. I don't think you need to see those other flowers at all. And don't be afraid to crop. I mean, the sensors now have such good resolution that you can crop a lot. And then you can also, like I said, you can use things like on-one resize or a Topaz gigapixel to up-res the image to get back some size if you need it. But, you know, again, do those other flowers really support the subject or do they distract? And for me, they distract. So I'd like to see just a smaller section of the background, just the circular portion with just a little bit of the petals poking off and just come in really tight. But I gave it a 9.
Let it snow.
So I really like the feel of this image. I mean, you know, I think it has a nice feel to it with the snow falling down and you know, you've got 2 different kinds of trees, you know, and you've got the shape in the middle. So there's a lot of stuff really working in your favor there. It's definitely from a technical standpoint needs quite a bit of work though. So it does not look sharp. And it's hard to tell exactly, you know, what's the cause of that, but this is an image where, you know, the snow can throw off your focusing. You have to be really careful with your shutter speeds to make sure that you're you know, using a fast enough shutter speed to stop both the snow and any camera shake. So, you know, I think that's something that, again, you can really practice with the next time that you have a situation like this. And then I would probably, again, I think that the white diagonal line of the snowbank is really more distracting than helpful. So I would probably either just crop that out. And I think you could without losing too much of the image. But the technicals are the things that really, I think, are, you know, bringing it down in score. But you're on the right track. So just go out and try this again, because I think you'll really get a nice image out of it. So I did give it a 6.
Our final image tonight is called Fearless Living.
Okay. And so again, you know, I think you did center the subject, and we probably, you know, don't really want to do that in this scene. I would probably put my negative space more in the front and crop off, you know, everything that's behind it. But the, you know, the boat is sharp and you've got, you know, some nice light hitting the sail. So that's working in your favor. But we do need to work on our technicals on this image. And, you know, if you can look at the clouds in the upper left, especially the clouds that are right behind the boat are, you know, well exposed. But when you go over to the left, we've blown out all of those highlights. So, and I don't think we can crop them out entirely, but you know, we really have to be careful when we have a bright area that we don't blow out all the detail, because our eye is always going to go to the lightest part of the image. So you know, and I think you've probably blown it out beyond recovery. It looks like it to me. So this is something you'd have to just work on in the future, but really make sure you're always exposing for the highlights. Make sure you have highlight detail where you need it. And then, you know, you can bring the shadows up a little bit in processing if you need to, but we don't want to blow out a highlight, like a major highlight, like a cloud like that. So and then just again, you did a nice amount of space, I think, on the base and a good amount of space on the top. We just need to move our composition, thinking about the rule of thirds and getting some more composition in the front. So, you know, keep working on it. I did give this, I did get this one a 6.
All right, let's go back quickly to the nines and the last half 9s and 10s, which we would go back to the last basket. And this is okay, this is The Last Basket by Barbara Mason-Bill.
Thank you again, Cheryl, for the comments. I've really learned a lot from your critiquing of my own images, but other people's images, and I really enjoyed it. So thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Good. I'm glad it's helpful.
For sure.
Next one is Mackenzie and Fabric, which is Kiefer Hunterford.
I can't unsee what you said about the hand now. You're completely right. And the eyes. There's a fun backstory on this, actually. She arrived late with a 3-week-old baby.
Oh.
And she was, she said, "Hey, I have to bring my daughter. My babysitter's fallen through," and I'm like thinking there's going to be a kid running around. 3-week-old. Her boyfriend kept calling her and annoying her, and she didn't like any of her outfits. So we just kind of looked at each other, and I grabbed this piece of fabric, and I could almost see her claiming her power back. It was kind of a magic moment. I turned the tether monitor over so that she could see what was happening. And just over the space of 10 minutes, she just kind of started claiming her power back. It was really cool. That's awesome.
Yeah, she has a great expression too. Yeah.
Nice work, Kiefer. This is Wild Haven in the Fjord by Joy Lindholm.
Yeah, thank you again, Cheryl, so much. This was taken last summer in Norway. We were in the Geiranger Fjord, riding a ferry for about an hour and almost to the end. And actually have to give my lovely wife, Haley, some credit for this one, because I was on the opposite side of the ferry taking a picture of a waterfall. All of a sudden, she hollered at me to get over here with my camera. And so found this beautiful little cottage, just bathed almost in like the spotlight of sunbeam coming over the mountain. And it was really magical. So I'm really, really glad to have captured this moment. So thank you.
Nicely done.
Nice job, Haley. This is Controlled Chaos by Brian Donovan.
I took this at a little farm in Hungary. They were putting on a horse show for the tourists. I was able to get really close because there's a fence between me and the horses. But I appreciate your comments.
Good.
And Morning Yoga is by Stuart Little.
Nice.
Here I am. I'm unmuted now. I really appreciate your critique of this photo. This was taken when I was in Southern California and I was doing a photo walk, which is the Scott Kelby photo walk. And the guy who was the leader of the walk had hired these people to do these yoga poses at sunrise. And it was on the beach in like Oxnard in that area. And it was just, perfect sunrise and the silhouette in the background. And we were actually down below on the sand, and they were up on a bit of a berm. But it was just perfect the way the sun was coming over and everything like that.
Yeah. Really nice.
Yeah, I think you're right about those distracting trees there. I think I could probably maybe do something about erasing them with Lightroom or something, but
I think you can. Yeah, I would try it because I think you can, and I think it'll just make it a stronger image.
Yeah, and then the other thing you mentioned about the sun, I tried really hard to do some masking of that and seeing if I could tone it down, but it just didn't look right.
Yeah, okay. Okay.
So maybe
Yeah.
if I was just a little bit to the right and the sun was more behind her ankle, that might have worked better.
Just a little bit. Yeah, that might have worked better, but it's, I mean, it's not terrible. It's not, I don't think it ruins the image, but if you could tone it down, it would probably help a little bit.
Right, right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your comments and love your critiques.
Oh, good. I'm glad it helped.
This is The Offering by Benjamin Hernandez.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you. I don't think I deserve a 9 on this image. So the one thing that you commented that it kind of struck me a little bit is I don't know if you judges get the EXIF data of the image because I mean there's no possible way that I could have gotten any sharper on a 35 millimeter lens at f/16. The challenge is that it's a 35th of a 1/35th of a second exposure. So the hand, as he's putting the sushi down, add the diffraction of the light and the glove, it will make it a little bit more less focused. But if you see the edge of the table, it's perfectly sharp, right?
Yes. Yes.
So anyway, the comment struck me as somewhat, as I said, not claiming that I'm super happy with the 9, thank you, but I do think that this is my personal point of view, that the image overall might not be to and might not necessarily appeal to you, which is perfectly fine. But as I said, I don't think that there's anything technically that could have been done differently with this image. Once again, I do appreciate your comment. I wish I would have waited a little bit longer to take this shot while he was serving the sushi. But sometimes with street photography, this is landscape stays still, but
no,
don't.
Right. And yeah, I know. And I think you did an excellent job with, especially under those circumstances. It's just that, sometimes, and I did, I did not look at the f-stop. I don't know if I have that information or not. And I do get lower resolution files, so I'm not looking at your raw or anything, or the really high res files. So it is sometimes a little difficult for me to see exactly what's going on. But sometimes I don't know where you put your focus spot. But a lot of times what will happen in a scene like this is someone will put the focus spot on the face or the eyes. And if you're using f/16, if you just moved your focus spot more to the arm, not the hand, but the arm, you would pull more depth of field in the front and still pull enough in the back to get the face. So I don't know exactly where you put your focus point, but it's something to think about. Placing that focus point can make a really big difference in how much you're able to pull both ways. Yeah. But I think you did a really amazing job. I mean, with the low light and street photography, I mean, really, it's really good.
Thank you. No, the focus point was placed on the board, but as I said, it was 1/35th of a second. So he was moving his hand. So ultimately, but as I said,
yes.
I mean, once again, I am super happy with a 9. I don't think it deserves a 9, but thank you.
Well, no, I think given all the challenges of it, I do think it deserves a 9. But yeah, no, I mean, and just to get it sharp, as much of it sharp as you did with that slow at shutter speed is remarkable. So good job.
I'll take it.
Okay.
This is Waterways of the Past by Bob Corson.
Hello, Cheryl.
Hey, Bob.
This is why I got a drone.
There we go. Yeah.
This is one of my first drone captures.
Nice.
And the hardest part, obviously, is trying to find a path from the sky. And so your feet are off the ground, a whole different perspective, but just trying to find something that works.
Uh-huh.
Thanks so much that it does work.
I know it turned out really nicely.
I looked at this vertically, I looked at different scenarios. Obviously, I took a lot of different shots. Obviously, back to Utah, one of my favorite areas to go. And I was a little concerned about adding more saturation. So would you say more saturation in the golds versus, or just overall to get more contrast?
Well, I would try it both ways. I mean, I would try it. Really, this image you could play with a lot of different things. I mean, you could play with trying to make the shadows go more blue and then really pop out the contrast of the warmer tones. Yeah, so you could try, different saturation techniques and see what you like. I mean, you may like it the way it is, but I'd be interested in playing with the saturation a little bit.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, you bet.
I knew it was you, and I still hate you, but only because I'm really jealous.
Todd Lytle.
And then this is Beholden to Yellow by Allie Green. She did leave some comments. While hiking in the summer in Colorado, this bee was enjoying buzzing around the yellow flowers. Thank you, Cheryl, for another great round of comments and critiques. I'm pretty sure you did last January, and if I'm not mistaken, you might have done the January prior, so perhaps we'll see you again in January of 27.
Seems to be my month.
Anyway, great stuff. As many of the commenters said, that listening to your critique is really helpful, regardless of what scores we got. And I agree with that. The next presentation or the next program is February 11th here with McCory James is his name. Last name first name last kind of a situation. His first name really is McCory. He's going to do a presentation to us on getting the best out of our travel photography shots, which I'm really looking forward to. So, Cheryl, any last words of wisdom from you?
No, everybody did a great job. There's some really beautiful work in here. So thanks for sharing it. And it was a pleasure to be with you all. And feel free to reach out. Please, feel free to join my mailing list so I can keep in contact with everybody. But it was really a pleasure to be here again.
That's great, Cheryl. We will do. Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Have a great night.
And thanks to everybody. Thanks for joining. See you guys.